The first scream didn't come from fear. It came from a mother whose heart had already been broken 1,000 silent times. Serena Vale had faced hostile boardrooms, ruthless negotiations, and headlines that called her the youngest steel-minded CEO in the city. None of it ever made her hands tremble. But that afternoon, under the golden haze of a quiet park, her knees nearly gave way as her son slipped from the bench and ran toward the open grass, his tiny legs moving with a determination that terrified her. He never ran toward people. He never ran at all. Before we go any further, take a moment. If you believe the world still needs kindness and second chances, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? Serena had not always been this version of herself. Years ago, before the awards and magazine covers, she had simply been a woman fighting for survival, juggling sleepless nights and impossible responsibilities. Success had come at a cost she never admitted publicly. Behind the polished image and commanding presence was a mother living with a constant ache, the quiet, relentless grief of raising a child who had never spoken a word. Her son, Adrian, was 6 years old, with eyes too observant for his age and a silence that weighed heavily on every room he entered. Doctors had offered labels, assessments, theories, and timelines that blurred together like meaningless noise. Developmental delay, possible trauma response, rare neurological condition. Each phrase sounded clinical and detached, as if it belonged to someone else's life. But Serena lived the reality every day. The birthday candles blown out without laughter, the school events attended with forced smiles, the nights spent wondering whether her son's mind was a storm she could never calm. The park had been an impulsive decision. Serena rarely allowed spontaneity into her tightly scheduled existence, but something about that day felt unbearable within the walls of her penthouse. Adrian had been unusually restless, his small hands repeatedly tapping against the window, his gaze fixed on the distant trees below. It was a behavior she didn't fully understand, yet something about it felt like longing. So she canceled meetings, ignored emails, and drove him herself, shedding her corporate armor for a simple floral dress that made her feel almost anonymous. The park was alive with the ordinary magic of a weekend afternoon. Children chased each other in chaotic joy. Parents laughed, dogs barked, and the air carried the scent of grass and sunlight. To Serena, it felt like stepping into a world she could observe, but never truly enter. Adrian sat beside her on the wooden bench, his small frame tense, his eyes scanning everything yet connecting with nothing. Serena watched other families with a bittersweet mixture of envy and resignation, the familiar heaviness settling into her chest. Then something changed. It began with Adrian's gaze locking onto a figure across the field, a man kneeling beside a little girl near the swings. There was nothing remarkable about him at first glance. He wore faded jeans, a worn gray shirt, and the unmistakable fatigue of someone who carried life's burdens alone. Yet there was a warmth in his posture, a gentleness in the way he moved, that seemed to radiate across the distance. The girl laughed freely, her curls bouncing as she tried to balance on the swing, while the man's expression held a quiet devotion that struck Serena unexpectedly. Adrian did not look away. Serena noticed the tension in her son's body shift into something else, something unfamiliar. Curiosity, recognition, a flicker of emotion she had rarely seen directed toward strangers. Her breath caught as Adrian slowly slid off the bench. At first, she assumed he was simply wandering, another of his silent explorations. But then he began to run. The sight froze her in place for a split second that felt like an eternity. Adrian never ran toward anyone. He avoided crowds, retreated from noise, and clung to Serena's presence like an anchor. Yet now he was moving across the grass with an urgency that sent panic surging through her veins. Her mind flooded with worst-case scenarios. A fall, a collision, a misunderstanding with a stranger who might not understand her son's silence. She rushed after him, her heart pounding violently. By the time Serena reached them, Adrian had stopped just a few feet from the man and the girl. The little girl stared with open curiosity, but it was the man's reaction that stunned Serena. Instead of discomfort or suspicion, his face softened with a quiet understanding, as though he recognized something invisible yet profound. Adrian stood there, breathing heavily, his eyes fixed on the man with an intensity that made Serena's throat tighten. And then, for the first time in years, Serena saw something she had nearly given up hope of witnessing. Adrian smiled. It was small, hesitant, almost fragile, but unmistakably real. Serena felt the world tilt. Her son's expressions were typically muted, guarded, distant. But this smile carried warmth, connection, an emotion so pure it nearly brought her to tears. The man remained kneeling, still and calm, meeting Adrian's gaze without intrusion or pressure. There was a stillness between them, an unspoken exchange Serena could not decipher, yet could deeply feel. What happened next shattered Serena's carefully constructed emotional defenses. The man slowly extended his hand, not abruptly, not insistently, but with a patience that felt almost reverent. Adrian did not recoil. Instead, he stepped forward. Serena held her breath, every muscle in her body tense. Adrian's small fingers hovered uncertainly before gently touching the man's hand. It was a simple gesture, but to Serena it felt monumental, seismic, impossible. The girl giggled softly, as if sensing the sacredness of the moment without understanding why. Serena's eyes burned with unshed tears as memories flooded her mind. Years of therapies, exercises, hopeful attempts, and silent disappointments. She had witnessed specialists attempt to reach Adrian with sophisticated techniques and carefully crafted strategies. Yet here, in the middle of a public park, a stranger achieved something none of them had. Her son willingly connecting, smiling, reaching. The man's expression carried no triumph, no surprise, only a deep, compassionate warmth. It was as if he saw Adrian not as a puzzle to solve, but as a human being to accept. Serena learned his name later. His name was Elias Rowan, a single father who had been raising his daughter alone after a tragedy that reshaped his life. Loss had etched quiet lines into his face, but it had also carved an extraordinary gentleness into his spirit. He understood silence in ways Serena did not yet comprehend. Over the following weeks, the park became more than a place. It became a quiet miracle. Adrian began responding to Elias with an openness Serena had never seen. There was no forced progress, no dramatic transformation, only small, deeply meaningful shifts. Adrian's body relaxed in Elias's presence. His eyes brightened. His rare smiles appeared more frequently. Serena watched in awe and disbelief, her heart oscillating between gratitude and an almost painful hope she feared to fully embrace. For Serena, the greatest revelation was not merely Adrian's changes, but her own. Beneath her success and control, she had carried an isolating loneliness, a belief that no one could truly understand her world. Yet Elias's presence, steady and unassuming, gently dismantled that illusion. He did not treat her like a powerful CEO or a broken mother. He simply saw her. Months passed, and one quiet evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in amber hues, Serena witnessed the moment that would forever redefine her life. Adrian, standing between them, looked up at Elias with an expression Serena had never seen before. There was focus, effort, and something almost electric in the air. Serena felt time slow, her pulse thundering in her ears. Adrian's lips parted, his small face tense with concentration. A single word emerged, fragile yet clear. It was not loud, it was not dramatic, but it carried the weight of 1,000 dreams. Serena felt her world explode into emotion. Tears blurred her vision as years of silent heartbreak dissolved into an overwhelming flood of relief and joy. Her son had spoken, not in a clinic, not under professional guidance, but beside a man whose greatest qualification was kindness. If this story has touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like the video, share it, and leave a comment. Your support helps bring more stories of hope and humanity to life. And before this story ends, there is one special request. If you believe that a single act of compassion can change a life, write "kindness still matters" in the comments. Serena Vale, the formidable CEO feared by competitors, stood in that fading light not as a business leader, but as a mother who had just witnessed a miracle. In that moment, titles, wealth, and achievements lost their meaning. What remained was something infinitely more valuable: the undeniable power of patience, empathy, and human connection. Because sometimes, the most extraordinary transformations do not come from power or expertise, but from the quiet courage of a single heart willing to care.